not seeing everybody looking at me and groaning and going, oh. So I'm a go from here and just go ahead and jump right into the presentation, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
But everybody, you can hear me good?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Sounds good, sounds good. But I was just wondering if people real quick, when they in the chat, could tell me real quick what maybe a few reasons why alternative funding may be important to you or for your organization. I just want to kind of get a temperature on the room and maybe make sure we're going down the right path and I'm talking about the right thing. So if a couple of people could just type in the chat room or in the chat real quick, why alternative funding may be important to you. That'll give me something to look at for a second. And while I'm thinking about it, piggybacking on what Adam said, with COVID, I'll just be frank about why I think it's important. I don't think organizations are gonna have a choice. Now, I didn't put that on my PowerPoint because that's a bold statement, but I do believe that the current environment we're in, the climate that we're in, is gonna be important for individuals to look outside of traditional traditional funding sources, as we may not know what happens as economies fluctuate, as we've seen with the political landscape. You may have a political landscape that is not big for social service or philanthropy. And so in order to be sustainable and to grow our mission, then we have to seek out alternative funding sources. So just to take it real quick, I don't know if y'all can see the screen. Adam, everybody you can see the screen? Good. It's just a quick check.
Yeah, matter of fact, there's actually quite a few responses coming through for your question earlier. You want me to read them out for you?
All right, yeah, go ahead.
So we got Jessie, she says, because the revolution will not be funded. Fair enough. Holly Shook says, you simply cannot rely on grant funding or donations. Ivan says, seeking grants all the time is exhausting and not sustainable.
All right.
Vincent says more independence, less strings attached. And Amy says, need to secure more sustainable funding for sustainable programs.
All right, so cool. I'm gonna breeze through this point real quick though, because then I'm not gonna preach to the choir. Everybody seems to be pretty much in the same place. But let's look at this slide real quick. We have this let's say a small organization, 100,000 for the president, 75,000 for the vice president, 40,000 for admin, and 100,000 total for all other salaries. That's 315,000 already. Now, if we were talking about the land, let's say at least equipment, 10,000, or other program expenses, 60, 100,000. Now, those are low numbers. But organization doing the minimum, not the minimum, but an organization with a blueprint that was maybe a community size or something like that, but definitely an organization that's looking to scale. This is not a whole lot of resources, but already we're talking about 415,000 for the year. And we're talking about over 5 years, $2 million. So just from the beginning, as you talk about that, understanding that sustainability is millions. And so when I'm talking about how do we start to look at some things and potentially how do we put our organizations in that mindset, and how do we get to that place within our organization? Because that's really what it comes down to. And so, so some things to consider as you develop alternative funding. And please ask questions in the chat room, and as they come in, I'll try to answer them. But some things to consider. So I just don't want you to run into it thinking, oh, let's go start doing all these things. So there will be an initial expense. There's usually, when I start to develop alternative funding sources, whether that be, we'll get into some of them, but whether that be contract fee for service, or whether I develop a product to sell, or I do a collaboration, there's an investment, there's an expense. Now that investment might not be always money, and we'll get into that, but there is an investment. And so you want to make sure you have your people on board, all your board, if you have a board, your staff, and you want to get also your constituents, if you can. You want to get them involved in that process and let them know, like, hey, these are the types of things we're looking into doing, and get some feedback from there, because it's going to take everybody, especially if you're already operating. If you're not operating, then consider building your budget or building your prospects a little bit bigger. It costs to compete, it's gonna cost to operate. We'll look at collaborations and some other things as a possible way to share resources, but just be mindful from the beginning that in order to scale or be sustainable as an organization, it's gonna take a good amount of money. And so you have to think of it like that. It's not just about what I want to do that's good for the community. How can I manage potentially millions of dollars? And so another thing to consider, your cost management or your finance skills often need to be strengthened. And so whether that be through studying some courses, whether that be internet, or the SBA has programs where you get some support like that, you may need to strengthen your financial knowledge. A lot of people know what's good, and I understand that we want to do great things for the community, but in order to do great things, great amounts of money have to be handled. And so your admin and your finance can usually come up for that. I was talking to this room. Any questions before I go forward? All right.
Just a reminder that people who want to ask questions, just click on that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and I'll pull up any questions in case you have them during the presentation.
All right, and so let's go back to your investment. We got a couple of things to remember. So, and this is just real quick overview of some things to consider. We'll get into some more specifics around contract and other things in a few minutes. But just giving this overview, your investment, because there is an investment, in order to make money, you heard the saying, you got to spend money. And not necessarily money, but there has to be an investment. So that investment of time, and right now I'm calling time is just operational labor. And that doesn't mean it's not good, but it could be on the phone, doing phone banks, stuff like that. That's time, operational labor, time to get things done. There's the investment of your skilled labor. So if you have a verifiable trade or skill that you're offering to the process, then that something you would get paid for on an open market. I consider that your talent. And then we have your treasure. And so it's not just dollars, but access to real estate or equipment can be just as important as cash. And so you're gonna have to make an investment here, and on that pathway to sustainability, as we'll look into later on, as we look at how we make collaborations and things like that, it's important now to start documenting what you're already spending. So you can really be able to explain that value, that enterprise value that you have to other potential partners. I know a lot of times we get so busy doing what we're doing that we don't always write down all of the activities and all of the skills and things that we offer to the organization. But we want to make sure that time, talent, treasure is accounted for, and that you understand that you will spend it. And so this is the key. And so one key that we have to sustainability, the pathway to sustainability. And so we're not just talking about, excuse me, I'm talking to this empty room. We're not just talking about this pathway to sustainability. We're not just talking about money. You know, it's longevity. And the key to longevity, sustainability, is you have to be great at something. And so I want to make sure before we get too far in it that we don't skip that section. We have to have a great product or services or service that we have, our core product or our main product that is good. It's great on its own, not just because it's needed, but because it's actually good at doing what it does. And so when we have, when we're great at something, it leads to sustainability. It's just as much as the operations or anything else leads to sustainability. Actually being great at what you do is key and paramount. So I don't want anybody to ever try to do alternative things when we're still working on our core things. Very important not to miss. Consulting with clients, I've seen that happen, and I've seen that sometimes happen to myself. So get your core thing right. And while we're here, I just want to use an example real quick of Leaders for a Beautiful Struggle as an organization that was great. They're really great at a core thing. I wish Adam would jump in on this real quick, but I want to kind of tell about from what I see, and you respond if I'm wrong. But I saw you take the greatness of your ability to debate and be analytic and other members of the group, and then they were great at that, and that were able to expand into other things. But the core greatness is what allowed those other opportunities to come. Would you say at this, 10 years ago that you thought you would be program managers?
Right. Well, see, it's funny you mentioned that, because actually what a lot of people don't know about us is that the way we started is that this question of how to make money was something that not a lot of us had thought about. And for folks who aren't familiar with me, what Kendrick's referencing is that during my, I guess you'd call it my day job, I'm CEO of a local organization here called Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, LBS. It's a political organization. We've done work with young people before, but a lot of what Kendrick's saying is really relevant to us, because initially when we were doing political advocacy specifically, we were trying to figure out how to make money and resources for ourselves. And the question of how to make money beyond grant money was something that a lot of our peers hadn't dealt with. And so to his point, a lot of us were formally in debate. We did debate in high school and college, and that was a lot of our expertise. And so we brought that to LBS to teach young people debate, and also to use that in other contexts where we do other kinds of contracts and other types of work. And so that's really helped us in the long term, because now we're not reliant on grant money as our sole source of income. A lot of our income comes from other types of work that we do that a lot of people just don't know about. And so, yeah, to Kendrick's point, we just focused in on our skills. We got real sharp on our skills, and we were able to monetize that, as opposed to writing grant proposals, spending most of our time writing grant proposals. We could then market our skill set to a much larger audience that could take advantage of it. But yeah, definitely everything you say is on point, and is definitely relevant to a lot of our work.
Mm-hmm. So as we build social enterprises or nonprofits or whatever we bring, let's make sure that we're always thinking about that. What is the quality of this product or service that I'm offering? And if I improve that quality or service or service of it, then it will lead to other opportunities that will help me to be more sustainable, because sustainability and being involved with small business for over 20 years. Sustainability is not a one-time thing. It's not like, oh, we did our sustainability plan, oh, we done. No, that's not. Sustainability is a consistent, is a vigilant, it's a continual process. So always come back to that. Refine your products and services. All right, so let's jump
Kendrick,
right. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say we have a question from Lisa. She says, can you tell us a little bit more about how you can make more money outside of grant writing?
Yes, we're going to get into that right now.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm going to jump right into it. So you got a couple of ways you can make money outside grant writing. One of them is a contract or a fee for service. And I'll just get right into this for your group. Under that group, your contracts for use services. Let's just jump to NAICS code. So for any contract, federal, state, or local, mostly is going to use some type of code, and a lot of times this is going to be an NAICS code. For the purposes of this talk, real quick, I brought up this right here, NAICS code for use services is 6241110. And so federal, state, and local entities will advertise potential bids under those codes. And so we're talking about directly to your question, what is one way? One way is to contract with federal, state, and local municipalities. And they contract under all types of things. They contract health and human services. They contract products, hand sanitizers, water, different things like that. So that would be the first thing we would want to, one of the things that you can look at under contract fee for service is federal or state. There's also your corporate contracts. Your corporate contracts is the same way. So I'll give an example of a corporate contract. You can have a contract to perform a event, a holiday event for that organization. I've known a number of nonprofits that have performed MLK events or something, other things for corporations. And the way that, and we can get a little bit more into the specifics of that if anybody has any questions about that. I have the screen up here that you can see. The NAICS code for 611710 is also there. So let me explain that again. The NAICS code for is something that you want to look up for whatever you do. There's an NAICS code. So whatever your background is, there's an NAICS code related to that, and you can type that in, and that will get you related to get you information related to that. And so when we go here to this slide here, and if you write this down, this is the sites directly. So if I'm looking at Baltimore, there's a baltimorecitybuy.org. If I'm looking at Baltimore County procurement, there's this Baltimore County Maryland.gov departments site, and Adam should be able to put that, share that afterwards if you need that. There's eMaryland Marketplace. So there's procurement through eMaryland Marketplace. There's the federal government. And everything that goes through the federal government over $25,000 will go through SAM. It's similar, I think it's 10,000 for some of the other ones. And that's, those are ways to do that. And we have next. So you guys, excuse me, you can ask questions if I'm going too fast or too slow. I'm trying to work through this room here. So next, as we went through the contract and fee. And so I'll leave more room in the Q&A for that for direct questions. We had a product event sales. And so one of them I have here is drop shipping or PLR. And so I want you to look into your organization. Potentially, you could find a product that you don't have to take on inventory up front that you could sell as an organization. So let's say I'm saying organizations sell the bands around your hand. I've seen art books sold created by groups, and you buy what's called the PLR there. I have on that first line a private label, right, in order to sell that. You have the books. You can create books for your organization. You can create photo books. I've seen youth organizations create photo books in that standpoint. There's conferences, showcases, and tournaments. So think about this. You have AAU tournaments make a good amount of money. And that often run by nonprofit universities, nonprofits and other organizations. So think about what in my field may lend itself to potential opportunities for conferences, for potential opportunities to be a thought leader, potential opportunities to showcase or even entertain other people. Then we have I have another one here, refurbished donated products for resale. So we're talking about you can get iPads, laptops, other things that you can refurbish and sell as a part of your organization. As product events sales, there's other miscellaneous products that you can create. Tahaka Brothers is an example of an organization that sells ice cream here in Baltimore. ABC, not ABC, I'm sorry, Leaders of Bistro, LBS, they sell books. They also create opportunities for other people. And so through that way, in some management ways. And so those are some other ways to look at it as well. Next, we want to look at real quick collaboration. And so you have an example of a collaboration that could be alternative funding. And this was an actual contract, not necessarily a grant that I saw, but it was between university and a nonprofit as it relates to developing a smoking cessation campaign around getting teens to stop smoking. So they were able to work with a professor that did public health and her students and create a campaign to help support stop smoking. And through that collaboration, they were able to get funding, a contract, a 3-year contract for that organization. And then we have collaboration examples, because outside of grant funding, could be shared resources. And so I think there's an example here in Baltimore called the Baltimore Legacy Builders Collective, where I think they're sharing the CFO. And so don't just think about other ways to make money, try to find other ways to probably maybe contain costs or maybe work with others to increase my marketing size and increase my marketing channel. Then we have community associations and faith-based institutions. I work with a number of community associations and faith-based institutions that you could work with in order to go after larger contracts and bigger opportunities. I just want to stroll up real quick to go back to the part where I was at contract or fee for service. here. So like, let's say in a subcontract position, let's say you don't have enough to go after a large contract, and you need to find someone to work with. This is where the collaboration piece comes in. And speaking about collaborations real quick, just want to make sure when you do have a collaboration with a person, you want to make sure you get your terms clearly stated, what it is that you're trying to do together. You want to get a non-disclosure agreement, if you can, saying we're not going to talk about what we talk about here, and an MOU or something clearly stating what you want to state. But then from there, you can go after bigger pieces of the pie if you have other people that you already have relationships with. As I said, the university is a great relationship to look for contracting opportunities as well. We were able to take on a number of contracting opportunities with local universities where you have a semi-public-private partnership. There are ways where you can introduce those yourself. You don't have to wait. You can create an unsolicited proposal to take to an individual or group. So Adam, everybody still hear me? I'm not getting any feedback. Can't hear on my side. So I think I'm trying to, I'm sorry. All right, so just to go back, I'm gonna recap again. But we got contract, fee for service. Number one thing is find your NAICS code. You want to know what codes you're in and where you're at. After that, you want to go to these sites and you want to register for these sites in order to get the information for what you're looking for. I'm gonna leave these sites up here real quick so we can write them down. But once you go through this process, so let's talk about this contracting process real quick. Once you go through this process and you register, you don't necessarily win overnight. And I go back to this disclaimer, some things may violate your charter if you're a nonprofit. But if you have another LLC or some other type of social enterprise, you won't be as much affected. But I would go sign up anyway. And this is the way you get your name out onto the marketplace. You get your name out there as an individual that wants to seek contracting opportunities. You begin to meet more people and you start to get through that process. And it may take some time as well. So you want to go ahead and get that process started in order to be able to, if it does take some time, or if you do have to build some relationships.
Hey, Kendrick, we have a question in the chat. Someone wants to know, would it be more useful to register as a for-profit versus a nonprofit?
I would say this, as your goals, I would say as a for-profit, you have more flexibility. As a nonprofit, you're going to be limited in some ways about what you're able to do. It also, as a nonprofit, you don't get to compete for set-aside programs as it relates to minority contracts, woman-owned contracts, or other things. What a number of groups have done, and I will always look into getting my own legal counsel or financial counsel, is they created either hybrids, you had Benefit Corporation, which is a hybrid, or they created a for-profit entity with which to go after that nonprofit, for-profit entity to go after that for-profit work, and nonprofit entity to focus on their nonprofit work. And that's the model that I saw successful, was one where they had a for-profit entity that pursued a lot of their other work. I didn't know, for instance, that, and I'm not sure which one, but either Johns Hopkins Hospital or university, one of them is private and one of them is not. And so depending on what you're trying to achieve, it may be more useful to be a private entity. And we're strictly talking about contracts and fees for service. But going back to, let's go back to, we went through some other ways you can make money, but these are some other questions for you to consider. What is your organization's expertise? What services do you provide that have value in your community? Who can we target for our services? So I want you to go outside of your traditional thought process on who we can target for our services, and not just don't just think of the family or the individual per se, or maybe not even the school system. Try to think outside of that box. Who are some other people or some other places we can target our services? With the internet now and the World Wide Web being available and people able to reach people from all over, we're able to ask that question. We're able to access people we weren't able to access before. So what can we provide? Do I have a lot of youth that have great TikTok skills or other things like that? How can they provide a small business or another community organization, maybe some social media marketing skills or something like that? What other things are with inside our organization? What other expertise might we have, and who can we target?
Hey, Kendrick, you also have a question, going back to the contract. Someone wants to know, how easy or difficult is it to secure contracts on these government sites as a new entity?
I wouldn't say it's easy. It's not easy because I think if you think of the nature of government, a part of it, the nature of that relationship is to be cautious. So a lot of times they work with people they know. But this is what I do think. I do think it's necessary for a couple of reasons. Even when you don't win, you start to establish a track record of having your name on the list and applying. It gives you opportunities to ask questions to contracting officers. It gives you the opportunity to build relationships. Like when I go back to the collaboration or subcontracting, maybe you don't win because you're new, but maybe you can get a relationship with the incumbent winner and you're able to get a small part of the contract and work your way in through that way. Because there is some under the contract and site, there's some past performance desire, so you get a few more points sometimes if you don't. So I wouldn't call it easy, but I do think if we're talking about the well-rounded organization and we're looking at all the different potential revenue streams I have and how that's going to impact my bottom line, I think it's an exercise that you almost have to put yourself through just to show that you want to be a player in that room in that area. So I wouldn't sit here and say it's easy as a new entity, but I don't think, if we're talking about sustainability and getting off of the hamster wheel and being able to maintain some autonomy in our work and what we do, that's just not going to be easy. But I do think it's necessary. But so I encourage you to go ahead and get registered and go through the process. Even reading RFPs or proposals and understanding the language from these sites is a good exercise to go through.
The person who asked that question says, "Thank you, definitely agree and understand."
Yeah, so I mean, with all those sites, and getting registered on the site is just the beginning. So like we're in a digital world now. And so a lot of things we can think we can do everything online, but there's still, there's still a part of you that has to go out there where you can think about organizations and how organizations work. At the end of the day, organizations are people, are made up of people, and those government buyers are people. People at corporate contracts, people who give contracts at corporations are people as well. And so if you're talking about your organization still being around 20, 30 years from now, these things that you're looking forward to, then you have to go ahead and invest the time in those relationships. Go ahead and invest the time sometimes of putting in that paperwork, putting in that effort and going through the process, because it could take 10 no's, but what if you get that one win and now you have a 3 to 5 year contract that's renewable, and you now you've built the relationships now that you need to succeed, and now you have these relationships that's going to carry you for the next 20 years. So I just want people to think about that. It can be a challenge, and questions like I put very early at the beginning. There will be an initial expense. That if you've been doing things a certain way, you're going to introduce a new way to do those things. There's going to be a certain expense related to that. And so, you got to understand there's a time expense. You may have to relook at how you do some things. You may have to next week. I'm gonna get more specifically into systems that you can use that integrate those types of efficiencies into your work and what you do, because you may just have to be more efficient at what you do as well. It's really no way the path to freedom. I don't call it just sustainability, but the ability to not have to worry month after month, year after year, to have some control over the operations, your organization's operations, to be able to plan and to make some plans based on some stable plans, based on some projections. I kind of know what's coming and what's not. Not every year, we're going through this process. And I'm not saying that you have no grant money, but I'm saying is as much as possible, you want to diversify your funding source.
Hey, Kendrick, we have a question in the Q&A box from a Vincent. The question reads, similar to the issue of not violating your charter, are there potential issues of mission creep with the strategy of bidding for contracts?
I think that's absolutely something that you have to look into, that you have to think about why you're doing what you're doing. So I think that's something to be concerned about. But I do think there's one thing about growth and scalability and having some unrestricted funds. I don't think it's a challenge that can be ignored. I think it's a challenge that has to be addressed. I think mission creep in any organization is a challenge that has to be addressed, and maybe more so. And maybe if, when we're looking at alternative opportunities to funding, what I found was that maybe the mission originally wasn't as clearly defined as we thought before we started looking at alternatives. And so if you can, like we talked about in the beginning, do some things really, really great, there are usually some potential offshoots off of that that could provide potential revenue services just due to the strength of the core product. Maybe there's some offshoots off of that that could supplement without changing the scope of what your organization is. But I do think too, there's a big question that your organization has to ask itself. Like there's basically a couple kind of roads to go down. And so you can stay on the grant and philanthropy road. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But once we make that decision, we know where, that we have less control. I will never say you have control, but we have less control over the winds that blow. And so by going this direction as it relates to alternative funding sources, it is a strategic decision. And it's one that I wouldn't tell people to take lightly, but it's also one that I would say continuing to look at the feeling in the air and the things that's going on, I think is a thing that more organizations are definitely gonna have to consider.
Okay, and there's a follow-up, Kendrick. Also, what is your view of the current environment of contracting opportunities in the post-COVID economic recovery?
Well, I think with everything, there are going to be areas that get more attention and areas that get less. And so I think you really have to kind of forecast and kind of look into your crystal ball, just saying it, and make a determination what some of those areas may be. So I noticed with spending that even if spending overall is down or up, there are usually areas that are receiving more than others. So I would assume that anything around vaccine distribution or education or things like that would probably have more money, and some other things may go to the wayside. But I think if we're talking about creating a sustainable organization and creating alternative funding, that's one of the things that we always want to anticipate. That's one of the things that we always are looking to assume is that changing needs and changing demands on a constant basis. In America, we have a 4-year political cycle for presidential, and 2 for others, but every 4 years something could change. So that's what I think. I would think look out for opportunities that may lead to food prevention and other things like that. But as with anything else, some programs are going to get priority, others are not.
I want to ask something that I think might be kind of a crazy question. I've worked at several nonprofits in Baltimore, and what is your stance on organizations having like a dedicated savings or a rainy day fund? I gotta say, no nonprofit I've ever worked for in Baltimore seemed to prioritize having like a savings or a rainy day fund. With respect to sustainability, is that something that organizations should be thinking about? Should they consider it? Or should they do what I've seen every nonprofit I've worked for do, which is spend every dollar that comes through the door?
So I think that's a great question. I think a big part of that, and that's why I always recommend people get alternative funding methods. A lot of times, because I've worked with nonprofits that spend every dollar, but a large part of that is because they have to. So a lot of times, if you return money, they'll give you less money next time. And so that's why I think long term, if you're talking about, communities that are facing challenges, the nonprofit sector, they don't necessarily learn how to manage or grow an enterprise, which would take retained earnings because of the way grants work. And so I think you see a lot of what you talked about, organizations that don't have a rainy day fund. But that's why part I've mentioned here, cosmetic financial skills need to be strengthened. I think it's an imperative. And I don't think how the grant and the way grant money used to come before is going to be conducive to continuing to do that. So I think it's imperative that organizations get a savings fund and get a financial management plan. And I think, and a lot of times that costs more than what people can afford. And so that's why I would say, I would really look at something like, and I don't know much about it, but Baltimore Legacy Builders, one of the things I saw on that site that really made me say, hey, that's something to look at, is they have a shared CFO. So they split a chief financial officer, and maybe a couple organizations get together, and instead of paying somebody a salary that would be too exorbitant because they have program fees they have to pay, maybe they could get together and get some expertise that way. But there's also, I would say, reach out to your universities, your MBA programs. We've been able to get financial assistance from MBA programs. Many of them have what's called capstone projects. And they have groups of students, and you can often get them to help you work through some challenges from the business standpoint. I think a nonprofit has to operate as a business to be successful. Not nonprofit is just a tax designation. Everybody needs retained earnings to survive. You have to save some money from last year to take it into the next year to survive. Absolutely.
Right, beautiful. Okay, so we have 2 requests from the chat. Number 1, the 4th document that says investment with time. Someone wants to just take a look at that document one more time. And I guess as we're looking at that document, a question that was asked is, could you tell us a little more about splitting a chief financial officer?
All right, well, I would say any organization, and I'm gonna say this because I've seen it not work, so I always give the disclaimer. Always work through exactly what everybody's terms are, what everybody needs to pay, what everybody's looking for their outcomes. But one of the things that I wish I could see more is small organizations who split costs around certain high volume items. So you could have a one of those costs for the high volume item would be chief financial officers, because a lot of people don't have those available, or marketing people. And the way that, now I don't know the way they do it, but the way you could do it is if you had a group of people and you could contract them, you could get together a work agreement. And let's say he works 30 hours a week, and 10 hours he spends on yours, 10 hours he spends on one group, and 10 hours he spends on the other. That could be a way to bring in some expertise. Or you may have a campaign. Let's say you have an annual fund or a fundraising campaign, and you need some professional photography. You could get with a couple of groups, and instead of you shooting us each individually, where if you shoot us all at the same time, but for a discount. And so that's a way that small organizations by bartering and trading and working together and services can get a lot of good things done for themselves. I hope that answered the question, but if they any more specific about it, I can give a little bit more specific about how that agreement might look.
So Julie mentioned something about, oh, just lost it. Julie, would you like to expand on what you put in the chat? UB as well as social entrepreneurship capstone, as well as grant writing / fund development class projects.
Say that again, Adam. I'm sorry.
No, that was Shaquille. I was asking one of the attendees if they wanted to elaborate on something they put in the chat.
Okay.
Julie, if you use the raise your hand feature.
Yeah, I think we have a question from Julie. Let me unmute her. Go ahead, Julie.
Thank you so much. So yeah, just wanted to say, along with the university projects that were mentioned, sorry, I'm also cooking dinner. University of Baltimore also has their nonprofit management and social entrepreneurship program. A couple of the BCYF grantees are graduates of that. So they have a capstone project, social entrepreneurship, where they help nonprofits understand how they might create a revenue generation stream, just like, has been mentioned in detail tonight. And then also they have a grant writing class for that same program, in which students work with nonprofits to create not only a grant application, so they have an off-the-shelf sort of impact statement and all those components, but also a fund development plan. So just in considering other universities that have some supports for local organizations. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julie.
Yeah, thank you for that. We also had a question from Lisa for you, Kendrick. And the question reads, could you go more into detail about that collaboration, about how that collaboration could look, please?
Okay. So the example of collaboration, I could put in my advertisement or asking around. Well, first I would want to talk to the individuals I would potentially do that collaboration with. And then I would really, a couple things that I would really want to get down. With the period of time. And so it's like, we're going to try this for 3 months. We're going to try this for 6 months. We're going to try this for a year. Period of time where everybody's expectations was. So what do I expect? What does the other person expect? And really get that down into some type of overall document. And then you really want to take a look at what type of financial wherewithal you have. And so people have to discuss that, because they are sensitive things. If you sign a contract as an organization, or if you split them, then you would jointly be liable, potentially. I'm saying potentially. I don't know. Every setup is different. But that's why I would say those are key things to focus on. For each individual, understanding what is it that I want to get out of this concept, out of this agreement. And then from there, you can usually negotiate with a person. If I know, same label, like I said, with a marketing, if I got with somebody in order to create my marketing, we are all getting a website at the same time. If I was doing it all at the same time, I could get it at a discount. So that's basically the collaboration. And I would say that's any collaboration. Any type of shared resource or any type of mutual equipment exchange program or anything like that. Just take the time. It can be tedious sometimes, but just get everybody's thoughts and details and other things out. And that would be the most important thing. But you can do that, like I said, with CFOs. I've seen it done with marketing people. I've seen it done with webmasters. Instead of everybody paying for their own individual webmaster, maybe we pay you a certain amount of dollars a year or a month, and from that bank we get a certain amount of hours. So be creative with it, but a lot of it depends on the people you work with and what kind of agreement you can get with them.
Matter of fact, while we're still in the conversation tonight, I just wanted to remind people, or actually just mention the folks, that we actually have a post-event survey, and I'm going to copy the link and put it in the chat box. I just want to make sure that everyone who's here tonight, if you could just take a few minutes to fill out the survey. We want to make sure that tonight's event was useful to you, and then also give us suggestions on other things you'd like to see in the future. BCYF is an organization that is, or the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund is an organization that's consistently and constantly trying to get feedback from folks on what they think of our events and if they're useful and other types of things that should be offered. So if you just take a couple minutes while we're still in tonight's event, I just take a couple minutes to check those boxes inside of the survey, the links in the chat box. If you haven't seen it yet, please try to fill that out. And we want to make sure that we use your feedback for the future.
And I'm just wanting to
Kendrick,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just piggybacking on something that Lisa said. A lot of universities have that. So any university has an MBA program, check that out. Like she said, it's capstone, usually that ending project. And so that can be a good way to get some work, because I'm gonna be honest with you, it's gonna take a little bit to put the infrastructure together to get you where you need to go, usually. But that's okay, because it's taking you to the future of freedom and sustainability and all that good stuff. So, but it does take a little bit of effort.
Kendrick, I had a question myself. For people who maybe, there's folks who are kind of used to the normal workflow of applying for grant money and, waiting for that money to come, doing their youth programs. Can you give any perspective on what does it mean for what you presented tonight? What does it mean for a person's time and where they spend it? Because I know, like, for grant writing, it's like, it's like you get up, you look at the request for proposals, you fill out all the stuff, you give them all the requirements and everything. But what you presented tonight seems like there's different, that you got to spend your time a little differently. Is there any suggestions you can make to folks on how they should be spending their time when they are engaging this process of finding other types of revenue?
Okay, I would say, how do I say this? I think a lot of times, especially when we do good work, we can get so caught up into the work. But really, your job as a person that started an organization, not just a person who wants to do good things, but a person who started an organization, is to build the infrastructure, foundation of that organization in order so to be able to do that good work. So personally, I think, you really, and I know that's hard for a lot of people, but we want to be looking at 30% You know, I like to look at 30% of my time if I can. Now, a lot of people, that's not going to be possible. So with that, I would say, I'm sorry, hold on. So for that, at least a couple hours a week. And this is different from your other stuff because it should happen continuously. It's not one of those things that you do once and it's over. So building a sustainable organization is about, you know, what I'm doing over the long term and what I'm doing every week to get my organization prepared to take on those opportunities. I think it's the same way with grant writing. Once I create my deck, or what a lot of my standard grant writing stuff is, a lot of my time is reduced. But in the beginning, there's a substantial amount of time that one may have to put. And so I would just go ahead and look into, if possible, you know, 25, 30% of my week, if not 10%, getting ready for these new opportunities that I'm going to take care of. It's a new way of thinking too. So I think that's the thing I would always caution people to take their time and kind of figure it out. It is a new way of thinking if you're used to one certain type of thing. But it is, like I said, once you get into it, it can be very liberating, and it could put everything, all the cards in your hand, and then or at least more of them. There's never all the cards in your control, but at least more of the cards in your control. So yeah, that's it's an effort about building a company. And I have to say this because I go through this with my clients, and I'm not saying it from anybody here. If you just want to do a good thing, go volunteer with someone, you know. But if you're building an organization that you think is going to change something or solve a problem or be better for society, then be prepared to put a little bit of extra time into it. And if you're creating an alternative revenue stream that you didn't have before, you know, be prepared to put a little bit of work into that. But it'll be worth it in the end, I promise.
Yes, sir. So we have Ivan here who's raised his hand. I'm gonna unmute Ivan. Ivan, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
I already did. Okay.
There you go.
Thank you very much. So I think I'm a retired nonprofit executive with about 40 years in the business, and I found something that I think is very relevant to this discussion we've just been having. Make yourself a square and divided that into 4 boxes. And we've been talking about and listening to a lot of ideas tonight about ways to raise money other than just writing grant proposals. And what you do in each of those boxes, you think about every possible way of raising money. And so one box is low effort, high impact. Another box might be low effort, low impact. Third box, high effort, low impact. And the fourth box, high effort, high impact. Okay, so one of the things you put in those boxes may be start a social enterprise. Well, you got to decide whether that's probably a high effort and probably a high impact. So that would go in that box. Then you talk about something like payroll deduction fundraising, which to me is the most lucrative way of raising money because you get your name either in a United Way campaign or a combined federal campaign for federal workers or the state campaigns, the Maryland Charity Campaign. You get your name on that and you get a listing, and then it's really effortless work to just get your name out there, tell people they can make a payroll deduction contribution to you. It might cost them $5 or $10 a paycheck, maybe 25, maybe somebody will give you $50 or $100 a paycheck. And at the end of the year, that's going to add up. So that's what I'd consider that would be like a low effort and somewhere between a low level impact and a high level impact. That could go both ways. So those are just a couple of ideas that I think, if you think about every possible, an annual appeal, that's probably a low effort. And again, you don't really know whether this is going to be a high impact way to raise money, but it could be if you land yourself a couple of lucrative, donors with a lot of discretionary money who will really believe in your mission and purpose and vision. And you start with the people that you think you'll have the most success with. Don't you family, friends, relatives, colleagues. But again, the key is people need to have some discretionary money. They need to believe in you as somebody, as a person of high integrity, and they have to have some, at least a peripheral interest in your cause. And what I've heard over the years is that if you reach people that meet those three criteria, 50% of them will give you something. They might not give you what you're asking for, but they'll give you something. So I just want to add that to the mix. For the last couple of years, I co-founded an organization called the Southwest Sports and Fitness Alliance. We haven't applied yet for a Baltimore City Youth Fund grant, but we will do that as soon as they're available again. And, we're trying to basically build this system from the ground floor up, getting more kids involved, youth development through, sports-based youth development. That's what it really fits into the description here. So I just wanted to add that to the mix. Hope people can find some positive value in what I just said. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree. Those are great ways to look at some alternative funding sources too. And I just want to always go back to the same thing though. I think we talked about finding people, whether it be wealthy donors, whether it be corporations, whether it be people with collaboration. I will always say, get your paperwork together, prove those things that you was able to say by getting that documentation together. Whenever I see organizations try to grow or scale or expand or go to the next level, that's one of the challenges. So if you already know that that's where you are as an organization and you're ready to grow and you're ready to reach out to high net worth individuals and other people like that, then get as much tight as you can get tight, and then it'll be easier as things go on.
All right, as a matter of fact, we have another question from Angela Gilliam. Angela, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Angela, I think you're still muted. If you're speaking, Angela, you're still muted. All right. Okay. So if you're not, Angela, I'll leave it open for you to.
Okay, here
there
can
you
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hi everybody.
Hello.
I understand too that not always, yes, to donate to non-for-profit or for-profit organizations, for whatever reason, needed, but also give. Not always looking for someone to give you, but also for the organization itself to give out, volunteer to help out. There's a lot of resources around that companies offer different types of incentives that you can use to give out instead of always looking, and that will build your clientele, that will build your networking, collaborating, this is part of, encouraging the people, to want to be part of your organization, not always looking for, well, we need a donation, quite naturally, we always think negative more so than positive, and to say, well, this organization is always looking for money, so I'm just trying to keep it real. Well, we're glad that we had this talk. Here, let me give you I have an ink pen that you can have, or it don't cost nothing. It's just a little time of walking around and going, and it's like I said, a lot of resources. McDonald's, you can get coupons there. BG&E, you can get maybe some bags or caps or whatnot. There's a lot of resources that people don't know about that you can get freebies for your organization to help out, to give out. And then too, some other ideas I was thinking that the stock market, to see the ups and downs, then you can have pretty much an idea of where you're going to market your organization and who you're gearing it to. Maybe the older, the younger, I don't know, population. That's networking, with maybe like t-shirts. Okay, then have a compliment with t-shirts, start selling the caps, building up, because both my daughters had organizations. One had an organization called Bell Faces, and she also became a makeup artist, and she would sell makeup, and she started selling it online, and she would give discounts, and she gave little parties and had little incentives, and then my other daughter, she has a non-for-profit organization called the Diva Effect, and that was to help out young Black females to work in their community, to build their community up. So, you have to, give out instead of always looking with the old saying, Jimmy, gimme my name, Jimmy, all the time, because it'll be a big help. I don't know if you remember Malbus. He always give a big hook out every summer, and his population, with the people coming in, is tremendous, and there's others, so, not looking at ourselves, but just look at someone else and putting ourselves in that shoe to build an organization can help out as well.
I agree.
That's it.
I agree 100%. And so, Ms. Angela, I think what you're talking about was taking a long-term approach, though, to building your organization. So I 100% agree with you, especially when it comes to collaborations. Like she said, sometimes maybe you're not going to the company for a contract initially. Maybe you're saying, how can I help out? And then that helps you build that relationship and lets you build that rapport with the individuals in that organization. And so some of that goodwill comes back towards you. But I think with that, as with all of it, there has to be an understanding that if I do something that's not transactional, I'm not necessarily getting anything back. So this is really about developing relationships and building my brand equity and building our organization as a group to be trusted. And so understanding that there may be a long-term approach to that, a long-term value for that. I find some of the things that's so seductive about the grant experience is at least we know when it's getting awarded. And some of these other things, we don't know what the outcomes will be as we develop some of these systems and infrastructures in place to go after some of these alternatives, whether that be high net worth individuals, whether it be contracts, whatever that is, we're typically going to have to develop some things internally to be able to support that. So just never forget about that. It's a process, and as with anything, relationship building is key. Relationship building is going to be key, and how you build those relationships, it varies, but it's definitely important.
Yes, sir. All right, so it's going to be our last call for questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box or raise your hand here in the chat box or the chat box on the screen. Also want to remind folks, if you want to give us feedback on tonight's event, we strongly encourage it because we want to make sure that your feedback is taken into account in the future for all future BCYF events. And so if you haven't already, I'm going to put the link to the survey tonight back in the chat box in case you have to scroll back up to see it. It's in the chat box now. Encourage folks to fill that out to give us feedback on tonight's event. It's our last call for questions. We have a question now from Lisa. And yeah, And this will be our last question for tonight, unless there's any more. But like I said, you can put your question in the chat box or raise your hand. All right, Lisa, you should be allowed to talk now. You can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lisa Molak. I'm the executive director and founder of Let's Thrive Baltimore. We work with survivors in Baltimore City and young people in Baltimore City with a youth development program, diversion program. So I wanted to kind of first agree on a little bit what Miss Angela said, which is so true. Like, I'm a part of so many coalitions and I don't get paid to kind of show up to the meetings and support the other organizations that's in the coalitions. However, being a part of them coalitions does allow us to be able to, have an opportunity for the grantors to actually see the work that we're doing, and, and the people that's in it to be able to see the work that we're doing. And also, we post a lot. So like when we do fundraisers, just say for the COVID, for our food site, we have raised $10,000 just on personal fundraisers, the most we have ever done. And the reason our supporters are so happy and willing, without us even really posting it or inviting them to donate, they just donate when they see that we post it, is because they see the work that we're doing and we're really doing the work. And a lot of people say, oh, you post a lot. I post a lot because we like to show this is what we're doing with your money. We're really doing this work, because we have a lot of frauders out here, like she said, and people give me, but not doing nothing. And we also give a lot. Like, we give thousands of backpacks away. We give thousands of Christmas toys away. You know what I mean? So we give a lot. And when we do these fundraisers, we try to mainly do them for the things that we're giving away, and try to use the grants. And I don't know, some people do it differently, but use the grants for like overhead and things like that. But we try to do the fundraisers for things that we're giving away, the personal fundraisers, so people can really, really see where their money going at. And then you will have some some supporters who actually will say, look, I'm just sending you $3,000. You do what you need to do because I love the work y'all doing. You will have them as well. But when people can actually see what you're doing with their money, they're more willing and easily to give it to you. And I just wanted to add that to it. But I'm really interested in a fee for service, because I know that that will allow our organization to go to the next level of bringing in that funding, and not, like you said, living month to month or however. So I really appreciate, or grant to grant, So I really would love for you to send me that slide. And thank y'all so much. I filled out the survey as well. It did not take me off the call. I still was able to listen. So for those who think they need to wait, you can click it now and you'll still be able to hear what's going on the call. And thank y'all. Y'all did an incredible job.
Well, thank you. And I looked into that fee for service. I had a group of people in it. It's all kind of contracts out there, and that's why I say get into the process. I had a group that had a contract to oversee IEPs for a certain number of schools. So there could be contracts out there within the range of what you already do. And so that's why I said just think about it. And with everything, check your charter, check your laws, but try to think outside the box.
All right, appreciate you. This will be the part of the day of the evening. We'll be clapping up for my man Kendrick for doing such an awesome job. Looks like people really took a lot of great information. Matter of fact, Kendrick, so there's going to be another event next week with Kendrick, who's going to be continuing on this subject. But Kendrick, for folks who you have any closing thoughts for folks, and give people information about how to contact you if they want to get more information about what you presented tonight?
Yeah, my email is kstaley@thrivesustain.com. That's one word. I don't know if I can share my screen again, because I can put it up here. Hold on. And then my cell phone is my phone number is 443-802-4105. I always like to talk about these things. And for next week, I'm going to be talking more about some specific ways you can set up some of your paperwork. Looking at some of that time stuff you talked about, Adam, and maybe how we can cut down on the time, because there is, like I said, there is a part of it that has to go to building a new part of your business. And there's really no way around that, but it is doable and it is possible. And so that's all I have for people, man. I just hope people take into account and at least start thinking about it, because I really do think it's imperative for community organizations to figure out how to diversify their funding sources.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, again, brother, appreciate you for the brilliance and the wisdom shared tonight. If anybody would like to view this presentation, it will be uploaded to the, yep. And he'll send me the slides, and we'll make sure that we get the information to everyone who attended here tonight for the slides. But you also want to rewatch this video, you heard something dope, you want to rewind it back, it's going to be available on our YouTube page. And also we want to strongly encourage people, again, just the last reminder about the post-event survey. We want to make sure that the information that we're giving to you is actually useful, helpful to the work that you're doing here in Baltimore. Again, my name is Adam Jackson, Community Engagement and Communications Lead for the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund. Folks, if you want to find out more information about what the Youth Fund is doing, we encourage you to follow us on all social media at BCY Fund. And you can also go to our website at bcyfund.org. We're actually in the process of redoing our website now, but we are uploading and updating our information on the website. Also, to also remind folks, yes, sir. And last thing I'll mention, Kendrick, I just want to make sure I got your phone number right. That's 443-802-4105, right?
Uh-huh. Then also, I don't know, next time I'll put my Instagram up there. A lot of stuff that we got going on right now is going on there. We're all, I guess we're doing websites and everything as we speak. But that's another way. But next time I'll put that up there, and I want hopefully people connect with me, and we can figure this thing out together. It's an art, not necessarily a science. What would work for your organization might not work for another one. There's no cookie cutter standard things with this thing. The fight to survive and sustain yourself is a daily, weekly one if you have an organization. But we can get there. Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. And also, folks, if you are interested, there will be a continuing conversation next Monday, developing an infrastructure for success. So a continuation of this conversation will happen at 6 p.m. on our web, on our Zoom, on a webinar. And so you can find all that information on our social media pages and our website. Thanks again, Kendrick, and I hope that everyone else has a beautiful and safe Monday evening. Enjoy the weather. I heard it's going to be sunny till Wednesday, y'all.
Everybody enjoy. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Good night.